everybody. Welcome to the Lifetime Training Podcast. I'm Jason Stella, your host, and I've got a seasoned veteran, ex-professional strength coach. He's done it all, and he's a great friend, and honored to have him on the show, Mr. Vernon Stevens. Welcome to the show, man.
Jason, how you doing, man? Appreciate you having me.
No problem, man. Thanks for coming. And, I know we've been trying to schedule this for a while, and I appreciate you taking your time. And, obviously with COVID and what you're dealing with, we'll get into some of that stuff and how you're dealing with it. But, your story is just phenomenal. You've had some amazing opportunities. And I think I'd love for you to just start there and just share kind of how you got into this and how, your story led to getting into professional sports and then coming back and the such. So it's all you, man.
Appreciate it, Jason. The biggest thing that stands out to me is just being blessed with opportunities and trying to make the most of them. When I started, I actually, many years ago, in college, I switched from being a computer science student to doing health and fitness. And it lit me up from the standpoint of seeing the impact we gave people just by empowering them with a little bit of knowledge of how to exercise better. Yeah. So many years ago, 1994 in college, I switched. And from there, just ran into situations, opportunities, and tried to make the most of them. And so the thing that stood out to me when it comes to going from the private sector and pro sports is, what is your foundation? What are the fundamental principles I've used, I've been exposed to, I've been experienced with that have helped kind of bridge that gap where anybody I meet, I can help them take that next step with their fitness journey. So that's been kind of the conduit that's kind of connected, whether it's a pro athlete or someone who's never done anything, just having something sound that's fundamentally based and that works and building from there.
That's awesome. Well, and so you went to college where?
University of North Florida, Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
And
then how did that, what was your first job out of school?
So yeah, my first job out of school were actually in corporate wellness, which was more promotional and not hands-on. I was looking for hands-on work. Mm-hmm. So I ended up graduating school, working some local jobs that were corporate fitness, starting doing some personal training. And at that time, personal training was, especially where I was from, was not something that people were really doing. We had Gold's gyms in our city. And that's kind of what you say, work out, it was Gold's Gym or Bailey, or you were an athlete playing a sport. There's nothing in between.
Yeah.
The fitness lifestyle in the South in Florida wasn't at the time a big part of it. So what helped me the most was I got a CSCS about a year and a half after I graduated college. And within a few months, a donor at my university, so I went back to school, worked on campus at our one facility, was the night manager, and I trained student trainers on working out, even created a personal training program. Well, we had a donor that would go to Dartmouth. She's a triathlete. She was an Ironman triathlete. When it was hot in Jacksonville, she'd go to Dartmouth. When it was cool there, she'd come back to Florida. Our campus had an Olympic pool and a loop. And so triathletes would come and train. Well, she basically told our athletic department, hey, it was a Division II school, no football. You guys don't have a strength coach. I'm at Dartmouth, they have a strength coach. So she gave money to start a program, and I was Johnny on the spot, and it kind of flew from there.
Well, there's always something to say for being in the right place at the right time and making the right relationships.
100%.
I mean, that's a huge part of, how to move up there. So from there, what happened?
Got a great opportunity. Started the program at my alma mater, first full-time strength coach, all the sports. So 2 years into that, I actually met the strength coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. His name is Jerry Palmieri. He's actually still a mentor. We speak daily. And he was Tom Coughlin's strength coach at Boston College, at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and at the New York Giants. Nice. So he just retired 2 years ago. His program, so I felt like I had a good feel for program design. And at the time I was doing some conditioning, especially with the basketball team, volleyball team, reading, going to NSCA regional conferences, going to the national conference, just trying to fill my head. So Donald Chu and Jimmy Ratcliffe, those are some of my early influencers outside of somebody I worked with hands-on. Well, I got in his weight room and it completely changed my perspective. The first, and the word I would use is robust. He covered so many things in the program with the guys in the off season. And this was back when the NFL had a 12-week off season where your first 6 weeks was all strength and conditioning.
Got it.
So it's truncated now to 8 weeks, and 6 of those weeks are football. The first 6 weeks of a 12-week program used to be all strength and conditioning. So really seeing 300-pound linemen move their feet as fast as a 180-pound DB, it really changed my perspective on kind of that spectrum of the human curve, right?
Yeah,
A lot
I
of those
get,
guys were just big athletes. They weren't fat. It was impressive.
yeah. I remember I played small college basketball and I always thought I could play D1. And then I
Yeah.
remember sitting front row. I was lucky enough when California, when Jason Kidd
Oh yeah.
upset Duke,
Oh yeah.
and that California, well, both those teams had ridiculous athletes. And I just remember going, oh, okay. I get it now.
That's the difference. Yeah, no doubt. It's amazing. That top
Yeah.
1% is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it
For
is,
sure.
man. Yeah.
So the Jaguar job was great. Did an all season with them. Learned the most I've learned at one time. Had some really good athletes on that team. Then the next year they changed coaches, and it was a totally different process. Marcus Hanovich was the strength coach, and he was a machine-based, one set to failure, quote unquote, hit style,
Wow.
which I'd never. It's funny. I hadn't been exposed to with athletes. I was exposed to it in college because we had a Nautilus, the old school Nautilus system at our gym. So that was the basis of what our gym was set up on. We also had free weights.
Yeah.
I'd never done it with athletes. So it actually, even though it wasn't something that particular philosophy I took with me, it was great to be exposed to it because at that time, about 10 teams in the league were still doing that. Minnesota, Baltimore, there are a number of teams. He came from Tampa.
Yeah.
So that was great because it gave me 2 years of NFL experience. Then I went on to University of Colorado, and that's where I really had a chance to grow, doing football there, track and field, and men's basketball.
When were you there?
03 through 07.
Got it. And you brought up the Nautilus. Are you talking about the big like station silver machine that you used to kind of move around, or is it?
These were the cellular brass pieces. So you think about like what we have now with the techno gym or body, hoist or whatever.
Yeah.
It was the cam, the original cam system. We had the one line, and you had it might have been 18 pieces. And if you did one set on every piece, you hit all your body parts isolated. We had that, and so in the NFL locker room, he had 5 lines of all hammer strength and all different equipment. All their different pieces, mostly plate loaded. And again, it's something that I would say is not what most people do anymore at all for athletes, but it's definitely a philosophy that existed. And it's just another way to, solve a puzzle from their perspective.
Got it. So then you were with the Jaguars for a season or two, or?
Yeah, 2 off seasons with the Jaguars, 2 different staffs.
Got it.
That got me over to Colorado because the first staff I worked with was Jerry Palmieri's staff, and his assistant, Greg Finnegan, became the head strength coach at Colorado.
And that was back when they were there. That was kind of the part of their heyday, right? Wasn't it?
We were still pretty good. We were Big 12. So our era was when Vince Young was at Texas. That's when I was at Colorado. The Big 12 was stacked back then. Nebraska was still good, and it was a good process.
Got it. So you went from there, and then what happened?
So crazy. We're in Boulder, so we're 30 minutes from Denver. I found out that the Broncos had a job opening. So Rich Tootin was the head strength coach there. Mike Shanahan was still the head coach.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking this is the place to be. You step up. I'm not moving too far from home, where I was living at the time. Yeah. Go there, have a good interview with Rich Tootin. They had 2 assistant coaches. I get a call from my mentor, and he's like, "Hey, that's great, but San Diego." So Jeff Hurd was the head strength coach at San Diego, got hired a week. The next week I got an interview. We were the last coaches to get hired for that season, the 07 season. So Norv Turner came to San Diego. Jeff Hurd got hired. I never talked to Jeff Hurd in my life. Yeah. I flew out, had a good interview, got the job, and that ended up being a 6-year job. And I always look back and laugh because the Denver job was gone in 2 years. That position that they had, they got rid of in 2 years. And the job I had, it was only assistant, so just 2 of us. Better job, better team, better. I mean, everything was better. So it's just crazy how fate or providence, makes a difference, even in professions.
Yeah, for sure. So, along these years, I mean, there's got to be so many things that you saw working with the athletes, and then things that you had to try to implement that some worked, some didn't. Can you talk about that kind of thing?
Yeah. So one of the things that I talked about, Jerry's program at Jacksonville was robust. We covered our bases, but when I say those guys were pushing it, like we use Lawrence Seagrave's speed development program. So we go out and we did true high CNS, true full speed acceleration. Like our work was very strenuous. Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about the skill guys would be on the field for an hour and 15, 20 minutes. And we get to overspeed and we did everything. The linemen would do stuff that was really specific to their position. So our lifting was we sprint or change direction, whatever we're doing that day. We'd be out there a good amount of time. We go in the weight room. We pull, we squat, we jump. Like we had plyos in our program, but we also, and this is something that was new for me at this point, we had prehab. What everybody's calling corrective now, in 2002 was prehab, and it was trying to get ahead of those injuries, rotator cuff, knees, neck in football. So we had a good training staff. The athletic trainer Mike Ryan recently retired and is doing CBS, but he was there from the inception of the team, so about 4 years ago. He was one of the first athletic trainers to be a physical therapist and to have his CSCS. So we had a big brain group of people to pull from. But being exposed to that level of work really helped me see what humans are capable of.
Got it. Yeah. Well, and talk, something that I want to divert in,
Sure.
it's all related, and I think is probably really applicable to the audience. Is there's obviously training these athletes, and the things that you do with them. I think so many times everyone thinks that it's just the Oli lifts or the power lifts, and
Sure.
and what is it to take somebody who's at that level and ensure that they either increase, or in a lot of cases, I'm assuming, like you said, it's let's make sure they don't get injured, so there's that aspect of it. And then another question is the relationship between how a lot of people see that stuff and then they train kids and then they try to do that stuff with these kids, and God, it frustrates the hell out of me. So, I'd love to spend some time on both of those sectors.
Sure. I'm gonna go with the second one first. I think that was it's so relevant. So I've recently trained some middle schoolers. I have 3 kids. 2 of them play sports, 1 middle school, 1 elementary school. When I left the Bay, when I was in Dublin, I worked with Dublin High School for the last 2 years. It's amazing to me that people don't comprehend that your typical kid, what they should be doing compared to a 25-year-old elite professional athlete is just not the same. And so what we end up with is, whether it's specialization, which we know is a problem, or whether it's just you're doing a drill that a guy needs to have a certain amount of, a woman, power, strength to mass ratio, and training age to even try that drill. But you saw it on the internet and you think, so this goes back to coaching for me. When you as a parent, you need to get you need to figure out who's coaching the right way. What are the certifications, experiences, amount of time they've been doing it, because they have a foundation behind them, that they have a reason they're doing things. And then you need to ask questions. You can't just go down to the local park. Well, such and such dad is doing this and his kid is good. His kid might have been born athletic. It's a really tough thing, because I run into a lot of parents. I'll give you a real quick story from the Bay. I had a kid.
No, man, take your time.
He's now playing college basketball. Yeah. He was 5, maybe he was 6'1". Okay, maybe he was 6'1", and he was, so in basketball that's short.
Yeah.
And his freshman year, his AAU coach told him not to work on his ball handling and shooting because he played center for his AAU team. And I talked to his mom. I was like, look. And so then the other part was the high school coach had him working on everything. It was like, who knows how tall you're going to be? Let's learn how to play basketball. Fundamentals.
Yep.
He was having one coach tell him not to work on fundamentals because he's 6'1". And so I had to explain to her, go with the high school coach knows what he's talking about. He's doing things the right way. And it's just, but as a parent, they don't know. And for me, look, kids' developmental stages, coordination, proprioception, there's so much they need to learn, which is why playing in the yard or at the schoolyard, right, as an 8-year-old is so much more important than trying to learn how to throw a football.
Yeah.
Your body's going to change so much. So I really believe with kids, less is better, repeatability, and it's got to be fun. The one thing I think, until a kid's about 15 or 16, man, if it's not fun, their dedication and motivation is just not there. And like I said, I have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old, I can tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's strenuous and rough and hard and it doesn't excite them. And by the way, who wants a kid to burn out? You can't get a scholarship when you're 12.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have any tricks, with regards to, obviously trying to get kids to do the fundamentals? Because they do the same thing, right? They'll watch TV or they'll watch YouTube and they'll see what they're doing. And, Odell Beckham, and they're trying to catch one over their head, but it's, there's so many fundamentals that these guys either innately just gravitated towards, but then honed in on. But what tricks have you found to be able to help kids understand that this is really where you need to be before we get to those things?
I think a big part of it is having the relationship with the kid that they trust you,
Yeah.
because they're going to know, they're going to believe what you say. I think what happens when you don't have a relationship, some level of connectivity where there's a trust factor established, that they rather listen to somebody they don't know on TV, right, than
Yeah.
you, even if you have whatever letters behind your name.
Yeah.
The other one is having a program that they can engage in, but it feels attainable. Uh, when we moved here, we did flag football, and there's a day, and I wasn't involved. I would take my son to flag football, sit in the car and watch it. I didn't want to be that parent. He and
Exactly.
I would do some stuff the day after practice, but I would
Yeah.
stay out of it because I wanted, the reason I sent him to a team is to be coached by somebody else.
Yep.
There's a day they brought a guy on, and he was doing performance training on the field. Now 2.5 hour practice, they're hour 15 minutes into practice, so they've been working already.
Yeah.
I watched him do a set of drills with the 15 and 16-year-olds. And then he came over to my son, the 11-year-old, and tried to do the same drills. And it was very clear there's 2 or 3 kids that are really athletic that probably stood out above everybody else. And then there's some struggles in certain drills. And my thing sitting there, I'm like, he might have a good feel for how to train the 16-year-olds, but he did not grade it down for the 11-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the drills don't make sense to be doing an hour and 15 minutes into. And so these are the kind of things we deal with.
Yeah.
And so for my son, I can tell you there's one of the drills, I think you're sitting on your knees and you jump up and catch yourself in a squat. Wasn't good at it. tight hamstrings, tight whatever, and just it wasn't the right drill for him. Well, this coach didn't have any way to make it better or give him an alternate or whatever. So like my son definitely didn't have any interest in doing that with him again. And as an example, what happens with kids. So building confidence while building skill is really important. Yeah. And then also just, you want to set the bar high because they're a competitor, they're athletic. You want it to be a bar that makes sense for a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 7-year-old, whatever you're working with.
Yeah. And I saw a couple of videos that you had online where you were just focusing on jump technique with a bunch of kids, and doing, certain things, as easy as a squat or obviously being able to land. I always say you have to be able to land before you can, accelerate through the ground and get upwards. And some of that stuff was just fantastic. And it's probably one of my biggest pet peeves because I'm going through the same thing, and I just kind of sit in the back and don't want to be that parent.
Yeah. But I mean, it's you also don't want your kid to get hurt.
Exactly.
You want your kid to have a great experience, and more of their life as an athlete is in front of them than behind them. You never want to take that away with bad experiences or training that's going to get them hurt or drive them the wrong way. So, I mean, I think it's really important for parents to do their research, and talk to someone who's more experienced than them if they don't know, to make sure their kid is in the right program, because there's too many of them out there that don't, it's just, it's not the right thing.
Well, and something else you touched on, and, as we learned from, the Bumpas and all the people that have discussed, the biomotor abilities of speed, agility, quickness, strength, power, endurance, all that. And, so many go right to, I always see the speed, agility, quickness camps, but I'm like, those are like, you have to have strength and coordination and balance before you can actually go and exert that stuff. And yet none of them teach that, or they expect it to be done somewhere else, or they just don't know.
Gary Gray talks about stability and mobility. Most of it, he has his terms. And I think the mobility piece, right, is going to change as their bodies, especially little boys, as their bodies grow and expand, they get those tight muscles. And then stability, right? We used to joke about soccer where the great soccer players can kick a soccer ball and do other tricks, and they can't walk in a straight line because they don't cross train. They don't do track and field. They don't do anything else. They just play soccer all the time. And it's true, because what ends up happening, like you said, the sexy stuff, so to speak, the Instagram worthy stuff gets promoted, and there's no background work. The example I would use in the pros is I just spent 2 years with the Cardinals, and Buddy Morris, who's been, in the strength and conditioning for a long time, way back when Dan Marino played at Pitt. He was their first strength coach. We spent more time in eccentrics and isometrics than anywhere I've been. I've been in the industry 26 years. And we did that because you're building tissue resiliency. Look, the average NFL guy is fast enough and explosive enough, powerful enough to play football.
That's why he's in the league. Yeah, exactly.
Right? So what are we going to do to make sure that when that foot hits the ground, he can pick it back up again? That's the resiliency training, and that's the eccentric loads, whether it's high speed or low speed. That's the isometric, being able to stay balanced and controlled in those positions. We spent a lot of time on that, and it going back to that idea about having a robust program, it can't just be the high speed stuff. They do that anyway. That's what they do in practice every day. That's what they do in the game. So they're actually getting that. what is the background to help them make sure they can do it over and over again and recover. So
Yeah.
our conditioning was a big part of it, to make sure they had what we call tempo work,
Yeah.
where it's, low speed, lowers medium speed, recovery process, and then also a certain amount of intensity, but not so much that it's not 100 half gassers.
Yeah.
Put it like that.
Would you have, and putting you on the spot a little bit here on this one, but what would you say? There's parents sometimes that are listening to this podcast,
Sure.
and even some kids, hopefully. And, what would you tell the parent to look for
Good question.
because they're out there and they're seeing it and they don't know any better. And they're like, oh yeah, that looks great. But what would be those couple of things off the top of your head that you would say you should probably make sure that they look for in any type of program, if they're being, either paying for it or if it's just happening because they're on a team? There's a difference there too. There's some that are doing it and there's some guy that's helping out. Okay.
Sure.
And then there's the other ones where they're going and paying for stuff.
The first one that stands out to me is very similar to Lifetime's philosophy, where there's a training plan in place, where there's earmarks, there's progressions. It's not a flat, hey, we're going to run this and we're going to run this every time we show up. So that they had that the coach or the program director can sit down with you, explain not only what they're doing, when they're doing it, but the reason they're doing it. And that also, you want to know that they have experience working with the age group your child is. If you have somebody that's only worked with adults, so I'll say this as a sidebar. I'm thankful that I took some breaks from teams and worked in the private sector, because it gave me more chance to work with kids and high schools at a different developmental age than pro athletes. The gap is so big. And I hadn't had I started with college athletes and I went to pro athletes for a long time before I got a chance to even work with true amateur athletes. So it's almost like I needed that time anyway. If you haven't worked with kids and know how their minds work and their attention spans, then that's a problem. You might be good at science, but if you don't have the relationship, it's like a teacher. They know how to deal with kids. If you don't know how to deal with kids, it's a problem. And then I would say you want some kind of high level, not just certification that you got, but also that you've implemented certification. So that person should have evidence they've worked with kids, and they should have testimonials or ratings or past clients you can refer them to, say, hey, talk to Ms. Johnson because her kid was the same age as you and her kid had this experience. I think those are really important. You do not want to trust your kid like we would with anything else in life. We wouldn't just have anybody come to our house and babysit our kid, right? So it's the same thing with your coaching, because it has such an impact on what's going to happen with them as they grow into sports and really their healthy lifestyle.
Yeah. And the one thing too that I always is are they teaching people how to decelerate? And that's, you'd mentioned eccentric. For those that might not know that language out there, is the ability to actually decelerate, coming down into a squat, absorbing, and then accelerating. Because, obviously, like we said, if, you can't decelerate, you're not going to be able to accelerate very well.
All the sports involve change of direction, and change of direction involves the ability to decelerate and redirect your body. Even and some of the things I was posting was for this reason on that one Instagram account. Sometimes we get really enamored with straight ahead linear speed. And I don't know a sport besides track. And even in track, you run around the track mostly. Yeah. Okay. I don't know a sport where you just run in a straight line ever. Yeah. If your athletes can't break down, can't drop their hips and change direction, you can't play basketball, you can't play soccer, you can't play basketball, volleyball, football. Like, you can't play any sports, hockey, whatever. So I try to make sure when I'm training kids that are athletes, like that middle school group, we involve change of direction, reaction, deceleration, reacceleration in our speed training. We don't separate them. I don't say today we're going to work on change of direction. No, we always work on change of direction, because that's what makes an athlete great. Their ability to efficiently change direction. And that involves, like you said, deceleration, and then being able to reload quickly and move.
Yeah. And then there's the skill of, and this is what I think a lot of the kids sometimes hate doing, is the skill of teaching them the technique of being able to change direction. There's the action of doing it. And then there's the skill of where you're planting and how your arms are moving and how your hips are moving and all that kind of stuff too. So, again, I would say to the parents out there, if you're not seeing that stuff being coached, and you're paying for it, you might want to look elsewhere. Obviously, if it's an assistant coach and it's part of the team thing, you could maybe ask them to listen to the podcast. I don't know.
Sure.
And reach out.
And if you're a coach, you should take pride in education from a standpoint of, hey, you want to be able to separate yourself from other coaches because you want to be able to do better training. That's going to get you better results and more clients. So to me, as a coach, it's lazy not to make sure you're going to a conference and getting CEO and really just get in your community and find out who's doing it well and sit down and talk to them. I mean, you'd be surprised how open people are to spread the good news, really, and because no one wants to see kids have these bad experiences, and they're out there for sure.
For sure. So now, going back and that stuff, I think we can come back and do a whole nother episode on just that, and the benefits and the risks and what to look for. But, moving on to your story now, you were with San Diego, and then
Yes.
when did you make it up to the Bay Area, and how did that happen? Because that's where we originally met.
Exactly. So really unique situation. So San Diego, we had the first, I was there 6 years, seasons, the first three. We had one season, we went to the AFC Championship game. That's when the Pats lost to the Giants the first time. And then 2 years later, we went 13-3, won 11 straight games, had a first round bye, and then had a really bad playoff game at home. And so we're out of it. The next year, we went 8-8. It was a crazy situation. So we lasted 2 more years, but our talent level went down. New coaching staff comes in, they clean house typically, meaning your contract says you can get asked to go home when a new coaching staff comes in, no matter what your performance is. So personally, I decided, okay, we've been in California for the job. The job was over. We moved back to Florida for a year. And as a side note, it helped because I had some family stuff to deal with, and it helped to be there that year.
Yeah.
Got a call, got an interview for the Raiders, which is funny because that was our rival with the Chargers.
For sure.
We usually beat them in 12 games. I think we're 9-3, so we usually beat them. Took a job for the Raiders, and they had a season of influx, but never spending time in the Bay, except for just going to games, as a visitor.
Yeah.
So we had a community in Dublin we liked. I worked in Alameda with the Raiders. Yeah. That lasted just 1 year. They changed the whole thing, the whole coaching staff, everything changed. So we decided, I decided that the Bay is health conscious, is affluent, is innovative, is the entrepreneurial spirit is there. This would be a great time to try my way in doing some things in the private sector full time. So got on with applied for a job with what's now Bay Club, but it was Club Sport, and the studio was the first place I worked.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was getting myself into because I got there and it's like, oh, this is all we do. We have
group
fitness gets a rap sometimes, but training athletes in a group is group fitness. If you really think about it. So
complete side note, but I have to say it is, Channing, who used to teach bar over there and ran the studio. She was on America's Funniest Videos the other night, and
really,
if you can go back and see it, I'm not going to say what happened, but it is hysterical. Her and her husband, and they were actually our neighbors.
Yeah,
up in the Bay. So sorry about that.
No, so the studio. But what I did is we had those multiple sites. He had Steve Gilmore had all the different sites. Mm-hmm. So I went and visited the quad. I was like, maybe. Because I felt like the studio just wasn't enough traffic flow.
Yeah.
Then I went to Pleasanton. I was like, okay, this is what I'm looking for.
Oh, that's right. I was confused. I was confused with the quad in the studio. My bad.
Yeah, they had a couple different sites, right? So got to there, and I was like, this is where I need to be. So decided to try to work there, and so it took a few months, but then by the end of that year, had a steady business. And then that Christmas, I met the athletic director at Dublin High School, and they're looking for somebody to come in. So my last 2 years in the Bay, I worked for Club Sport full-time, training, full ledger, actually. Yeah. And then I go to the high school in the afternoons and work with the high school kids. And that was a great experience. And literally it's a mile from my house. So it feels like Providence again, right? It's like, okay, it's right here. And so, yeah.
Perfect. And then, then it was from there when we you got the Cardinal job, obviously, and then that went, and so now here you are, kind of present day. Yeah, I remember you reaching out, and I was like super excited to get you to come back on board, or not back, but to be on board with LifeTime. So, how's your experience been there, and kind of how does it compare to previous private sector clubs that you had?
So LifeTime is very unique because, as you know, there's so many sites, and there's a big plan. There's a brand that goes with it. There are standards. I thought that the training for a month to learn LifeTime's way separated them from my last experience, because really the last experience was here's some modules and you get on the floor and you do your thing, and that was fine. That worked. Yeah. but knowing there's a national brand and there's people at the top who really have a vision for just continuing to change the industry. That's something that's exciting, and especially this location being a new location
Yeah.
here at Biltmore, a diamond location, really having high standards for customer service, for keeping the facility going, and also for even just the quality of professional here at the club. That to me was exciting, and my thing is, again, came here, worked for two different head coaches in 2 years in the Cardinals. It's what happens with pro sports. The bad jobs, and bad jobs are probably not fair.
No.
If a job's open, it's because the team didn't do very well the year before.
Yeah.
That's how pro sports work. So typically,
so volatile, so volatile.
Yeah, and you kind of work with that, after you've been in. So I was blessed because I went from a D2 school in Florida for 4 years to a D1 school in Colorado for 4 years, high profile programs. We had a national champion cross country team. We won. We had 2 American record holders off that team.
Ooh.
For the marathon and for women's steeplechase, and then go from there to the Chargers, where we were a borderline Super Bowl team for 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. So I was blessed for 14 years of my career to kind of go up. So then the last few years, the first time around, I was like, man, what is this? And now I was like, okay, you have to make the most of each stop, each location, each community that you get a part of, and each opportunity. So like even now, for example, I've had people I've been able to do consultations with people in the Bay that I worked with 3 or 4 years ago, because when the pandemic hit, everybody's home. But like now they have stay at home, stay in place orders. So, laying those foundations down relationally and having a quality service has paid off down the road, even being out here. So LifeTime, though, has stood out to me from the standpoint of there's a plan in place, there's a brand, there's standards, and we're trying to build a really unique community and team here with this culture at Biltmore.
And you got a great team there, but I can't not think that the resilience that you've gained over all of these ups and downs,
sure.
And call them that or not, lessons learned, sure. And it has allowed you to stay humble, which I think you're one of the most humble human beings I've ever met, and be able to kind of move forward and be successful. So, and I think that lends a reason of why I think you're still maybe not, where you were when you were at your peak financially, but obviously during the pandemic, you've been able to tide this thing over and
sure.
make it work. And, any tips that you have to the people out there on how you've been able to navigate that and what you've been able to do?
Yeah. So a couple things stand out to me. The first one is just your personal growth. Not allowing the circumstances around us right now. Everybody, if you don't have a leadership mindset and you don't have a mindset of kind of, I want to pay forward continuously, no matter what circumstances do, it'd be very easy right now with COVID and everything that people are going through with the economy to, close the door and lay down and, but that's not how I was raised. And, that's not what I believe in. I think it's really important. Number one, work on yourself. Is to have a mission in life. I think it's not enough to make money. No matter what you do for a living, you make money. It's not enough to, you talk about being humble. Thankfully for me, my parents were educated, but they also working class. So I was taught to, learn. I also saw their work ethic. For me, if I can have an impact on anybody, that's what I want to be able to do. And so as a coach, as a trainer, as a husband, as a father, I want to be able to impact people so that when I'm away from them, they're away from me, they're still growing, they're still contributing. I think about our kids as trying to create the best citizens we can create. I want my kids to be citizens that contribute to society. So my mentality when I come to work is, okay, I'm going to help enlighten, positively encourage, and impact someone I'm going to deal with for that hour when I'm training somebody. And I want it to be greater than just, hey, this is the right exercise to do. Yeah. And the other one to me is, look, circumstances happen. How do you respond to those circumstances? What do you learn from those circumstances? And if you have a faith that there's more to life than just what's in front of you, being able to cling to that in those hard times and still press through. The first time I got it in my life, what was I in 2007 years ago? So I was 39. Mm-hmm. First time in my life I ever was terminated from anything when it comes to a job, because to that point, it always been positive. And when I left a job, it was to get a better job. So, that year was unique and new, but it also taught me a lot of lessons. And that's when I took time to learn some of Gary Gray's stuff. Yeah. That's when I took time to spend some time in the private sector. Jacksonville University is in Jacksonville, Florida, where I'm from. They're a D1 school, smaller school. I was at North Florida back in the day. It was a D2 school. Well, Jacksonville has a football program, FBS, and they have a good basketball program. Artis Gilmore played at JU.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
your basketball
Yeah. Bulls
story.
fan. He was from the Bulls. He's on the Bulls.
And D Brown played for JU. So I went and volunteer coach for free at JU. I go twice a week. I work with football and volleyball. The strength coach there was I can't remember the coach's name, but the coach was at Michigan State for a long time. This coach, he kind of followed some of his teaching. So never had worked with super bands and bands as much as we did there. Yeah. The way he utilized, and for me, that's gold, because now I have a bag of bands I carry around with me when I'm training my clients. And so where are the opportunities to grow and learn, even though I'm not doing necessarily what I exactly want to be doing? So having that mindset of just make it, the time you don't get back. So what am I going to do with this time? So crucial for me. And in those situations where I had to change, just redeeming the time for something that can pay forward has been huge.
Yep. That's awesome. Well, and like I said, you've been doing amazing stuff. I wish I was there, closer. I'm not that far. I just got to get over there. Yeah. But it's been just absolutely fantastic, and your story's great. And I wish you all the success in the world. Anything that you'd like to leave, everybody with?
Yeah. I think the one thing that stands out to me most dealing with clients here at Biltmore and even in general in Lifetime is the amazing opportunity we have in this country to have freedoms to be able to choose a healthy lifestyle. No matter your genetics, your history, your age. I deal with people who are 70, 80 years old, who are more active than people I know in their 30s. We have a great chance in America to be able to take the freedom here in Arizona. You can go outside right now and hike and be in this nice warm weather. Just value your health. My dad, real quick personally, my dad has dementia, so his body works fine. His brain is deteriorated. He was a master's in education, owned his own business, fought survived the Vietnam War. I've watched his journey with dementia the last 10 years and seen how different he is as a person, and what he would give anything I know to have his mental health. Yeah. A lot of us, mental, spiritual, emotional, physical health, we have opportunities to make. And if you're a Lifetime member, there's so many resources here. Take advantage of them. Value your health, because right now, if you live in California, you don't have the opportunity to go and do the things you want to do, or wherever these places are. And so I think it's so valuable to know that your health can translate into having a longevity that also translates into the impact you have in society. Oh
man, that's great. And we're here to help. That's the thing that's been one of my missions and passions has always been. Especially I use the word essential now. Obviously, yes. I didn't use the word essential back in the day. It was elevating the training industry, elevating yes. the trainer as being seen as a professional. It pains me that yes. colleges still don't really see training as, what it is. It's still the perception of what it was. And, yes. What our scope is. People may hit me for this, but the scope is just, it's enormous now because of what we're dealing with. We have to deal with behavior. We got to deal with mindset. We got to deal with training. We got to deal with nutrition. We got to deal with all of those things. Yes. And that's why we're essential. We really are. And, hopefully we can keep, preaching that message out there. And I think you said it beautifully, man.
I appreciate it, Jason. Yeah. I think we can help people have the best life they want to have. And so hopefully we can continue to do that, nationwide, really.
Awesome. Well, if you're out there and you're in Arizona, obviously he's at the Biltmore, one of the best I know, hands down. So make sure if you're looking for somebody that you get out there, you can get them, virtually, you can get them, all different types of ways now. So I can't thank you enough. And I'm sure I'm going to have you back again, and we're going to deep dive into this children training and performance, because I think it's needed, man. So thanks a ton, and
appreciate your time.
The best, man.
Thanks so much, Jason.
Thank you, brother. Have a good one.